Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Kuriaknits channel. My name is Erin, and I'm so glad that you joined me here today. We are continuing the Knitting Through series with Knitting Through New England. And this will hopefully not be the last installment of Knitting Through New England because I am just in love with everything that I've seen here in New England. I would love to come back and explore, and really I've only seen just a very small sliver of it. So I am actually in New Haven for a conference and at Yale, which is very exciting. It feels very fancy. But I haven't actually gotten to Yale yet. I just got here and we are going out for dinner tonight, so I figured I would film. But I knew that I was going to be road tripping it, and it's about a 9-hour drive from where I am to the New Haven area, and I went through New York State, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. And so I was looking along my route to see if there were any yarn stores, and of course there's some incredible ones. And so I'm going to share my journey a little bit with you today. The yarn stores I went to, what I bought, and what I think about it, so that if you're ever in New England, you know the places to hit and maybe the ones not to. The very first place I went to and the very first place I stayed in was Northampton, Massachusetts. And I actually thought I was in Connecticut, and I was not. I was in Massachusetts, but all the states in this area were very smushed together, and I actually love the area that I stayed in. There's a whole bunch of smaller towns all up in that area, and it was beautiful, like genuinely so gorgeous. It was in the Appalachians, and so it was just like, the Appalachians are much more like rolling big hills than it is like mountains. Don't think the Rockies or the Alps think like big green hills, really big green hills. And it was gorgeous to drive around in. But I decided to stay there as the first night of my trip. I knew I'd want to stay somewhere along the way just because I have a dinner tonight where I have to talk to professors at Yale and other people who I want to be in a week for. And so I knew I'd want to stay over the night before. I actually had to get here. So I decided to stay over in Northampton to go to Webb's. So I've heard about Webb's for a very long time. It is quite America's yarn store, and they have the amazing URL yarn.com. Can you believe it? But I had read online that they were regarded as one of America's greatest yarn stores all across the United States. And so I didn't really know what to expect, but I decided to stay there because it was along my route, and it was just so unbelievably well regarded. And so I stayed over and I got up and went for opening, and holy heck, this is probably the best yarn store I've ever been to, and that includes all of the yarn stores I went to in Copenhagen for deals and for the variety of yarn. It was huge. It's like they took the idea of being American and they applied it to yarn in the best way, because America is really good at one thing, which is capitalism, and buying lots of yarn, I'm afraid, is pretty capitalistic as much as we don't like to admit it. So I think that they're doing amazing. So basically, Webb's is a warehouse store. They have a front section store, which is probably twice the size of any normal yarn store, but it has more of like a normal yarn store vibe to it. And then you go to the back and it is rows and rows of yarn in a warehouse style situation. There is clearance yarn, there is sale yarn, there is yarn from bottom to top, there are cones of yarn. It was unreal. Like, I could have spent over $1,000 in there very easily. I restrained myself, but even then I think I got some amazing deals. So I just went to, I was just in Europe, and so I knew that I didn't want to spend a fortune on yarn because I feel guilty with the amount of yarn I've been buying. But that said, from this point, with one exception onwards, I'm hoping to not buy any more yarn. So yes, so this will be my stash for pretty much all of winter. and I am so excited to knit on it. So Webs has their own brand of yarn called Val yarns, I believe, and I didn't end up picking any of that up, but I did squish a lot of them and they were beautiful. I was really tempted to pick up their mohair, and I will say everything that I'm talking about, if you are not in the Massachusetts area, very understandable, I'm sure most of you aren't, you can actually get most of it online, and especially in the States, I think they have a pretty good shipping policy, and their mohair's on sale. So if you are a mohair person, it's on for $6.99 a skein, which is a fantastic price. I was standing in front of it for so long, trying to wrap my brain around what I had at home and what I could apply mohair to. And then I was trying to find a fingering or DK weight that I could pair with mohair, and ultimately I just couldn't think of anything to pair it with. And I didn't want to just get it to get it. I almost bought black. I've been thinking about getting black home mohair for a while because I've got some black yarn that on its own is a little too scratchy, but I'm a little worried that I'm going to spend all this money on mohair and I already have this yarn and I'm going to put them together and it's going to be just as scratchy. So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet, but I didn't end up getting any mohair. But I would definitely check out the Valley yarns because they are, I think, a very reasonable price, and yeah, very comparable to something like Cascade and Estelle yarns. I think the quality is around the same, and I think the price point is around the same as well. So what do I get? The first thing I got was the thing that I was 99% sure I was going to get while I was there, and it's something that I've been talking about getting for a little while, and it is one of my favorite yarns of all time. This is Blue Sky Fibers Woolstock Worsted, and this is the color Cast Iron. These are 150 gram skeins, and it comes with 370 yards of wool, and it's Highland wool, and this is one of my favorite worsted weight yarns, hands down. I just made a snow crocket sweater in this. I will have the finished object in my next podcast to show you, and it is a joy to work with, and it is a joy to wear. Because I just finished that snow crocket sweater, I haven't actually worn it a whole lot. It's summer, so I can't speak to longevity of the objects that you make with this yarn, but I will say that I had that sweater on hold and it was jostled in a bag a lot for about 6 months, and I have noticed zero pilling on it. That's not to say it won't pill. I'm sure it'll pill an amount, but I am just so obsessed with this yarn, and I think it's a decent value for a very luxurious feeling yarn. So I ended up getting 3 of the mega skeins to make some kind of sweater with it. And I wanted this dark charcoal color. So they have the 150 gram skeins, and they also have 50 gram skeins, and they have a lot more colors in their 50 gram skeins. But out of the 150, this was the color that was really speaking out to me, and I've been wanting more things in charcoal. So I think that this is going to make a gorgeous sweater. I'm kind of between making a cardigan or a sweater out of it. I'm a little undecided, but I'll see what's speaking to me. I'll see if maybe I can use it on a test. I'm sure there'll be something that comes up that really speaks to this yarn. But yeah, I'm ecstatic to be able to get this, and it was a pretty good bargain. I always have to remind myself it's an American pricing here. So they had it for, I think, $25. Yeah, that makes sense. $25 a skein, and at home it's about $30 a skein. But then Webs has a bulk price deal where if you spend over $60 on full price yarn, their non-clearance yarn, then you get 20% off your order. And so I got all of these for 20% off, which means they were $20 a skein, which is actually quite a good price. It's probably around 25 Canadian, which means I got them for $5 off, which like isn't the biggest bargain in the world, but being here was a good excuse to get it, and I'm very glad that I did. So that is the first yarn I got. The second yarn I got was on sale. This is a brand that I had never heard of before. It's Cloudborne Fibers, and this is their Highland fingering. Is it gonna focus? Don't look at my face. Oh, there it is. It is a very pretty gray-brown color, but on the darker side. I'm always so drawn to the gray-brown colors. I almost bought a lighter version, like it was just this shade but lighter, and I decided to go for the darker version this time. So this is a fingering weight. I would say it's kind of verging on sport weight. It's pretty thick for a fingering weight, I think. But I mean, the yardage does match a fingering weight, what you'd expect for a fingering weight. It's 494 yards for 100 grams. And I ended up getting 4 of these skeins. Oh, there's their receipt. That's good. So I can remember how much I spent. So this was back in the warehouse section, whereas the Blue Sky Fibers was in the front in their store section. So that was full price, and this was on sale. So these are regular $11 a skein, and I got them for $5.49, so like half off. And they're 100% wool. They're also Highland, and I just think they're fantastic. I think my idea for this is to make a cropped cardigan. And I think I have enough of this for that. I can always add a skein of fingering that I have at home to add some color work to it. I think that would be really pretty. These were really limited in color. I think they only had 3 colors available, and they looked pretty picked over, and I can see why, because the price of this is just unreal, and the it's not very scratchy. It's actually like a really nice, squishy, delightful yarn, and I am just ecstatic to have found it. I didn't even check the dye lot on these. I hope that they did. Did they? Well, if they didn't, they're all the same, so that's great. So yeah, this is the second sweaters quantity I got. And I got one more sweaters quantity, and I got it in this stunning yellow. Look at that. Stop looking at my face. There we go. It is beautiful, and I didn't even realize that it's in the shade Curry, which is going to make my husband very happy because he loves curry, and he is teaching me to also love curry. We always joke, like, his big thing of his culture is food, that he likes to retain from his culture is food. He loves curries and I don't know, other Indian dishes. And I was joking that he met the only person in the world that wasn't big on Indian food. I had never tasted, I think, any Indian food at all until we started dating. So, and I'm learning to like it. I found it wasn't something that I loved right away, but now there are some dishes that are just my favorite dishes. And one of them is a shrimp curry that his mother makes. They are South Indian, so the curries are a little bit different than they are up north. And I find that I still don't have much of a taste for North Indian food, but South Indian food is so good. It's delicious. But anyways, this is in the color curry, and now I cook with curry spice and turmeric sometimes. And yeah, it's just amusing to me that that's the color name. But anyways, I was looking for, I really wanted like an orange, like a dark orange color, but I couldn't find the exact right color in a yarn that I really liked. But I saw this, and this was on a pretty big sale. This is Jagger Spun, which is spinners of natural fibers since 1898 in Springvale, Maine. So I'm glad to have at least gotten one American yarn from there. It is 332 yards, and it's a sport weight. So I ended up getting 4 of these, and these are going to be going towards a test knit that I'm doing for Sophie, the Knit Purl girl. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I don't remember what the name of her sweater is. Oh, I'll put it on the screen. But it is a beautiful textured sweater, so I was looking for something that would have decent stitch definition, and I think that the spin on this yarn will give pretty good stitch definition. And I think the color is just so fun and cheery, but also like fall. I could definitely see myself wearing in fall, so I will be casting this on very shortly, and I'll talk about it more in my next podcast. But hers was a light DK, and this is a sport, but a lot of people, like, the gauge is really tight on a DK, so I think a sport will actually fit really well. I hope, at least. If it doesn't work for that, I'm sure I can find something else to do with this. But I just love this. And so this one is regular $20 a skein, and it was on for $12.99. Excuse me. So I spent $52 on this sweater's quantity of yarn. so like 65 Canadian dollars, which isn't too bad, especially like I can already tell that the quality of this yarn is really, really good. It is definitely rougher than the 2 previous wools that I have shown, but I think it's just gonna wear a little bit better. And yeah, so if you spend over $100, you get a project bag. So I got this little Webs project bag, very basic, but I mean, it's perfect for what it needs to do. And yeah, I love Webs. I would absolutely recommend going. They have just any yarn that you can think of. They had so much Nora yarn. If you are a Nora yarn person, highly recommend. They had Rowan. They had, I don't know, just go on their website, West Yorkshire Spinners. Unfortunately, they didn't have good color options for them in stock, but they might have more online. They're also amazing for weavers. They had so many cones. I couldn't find a cone in a yarn that I thought would be good for knitting. A lot of the cones were in fingering or like really fine, like lace weight yarns. But yeah, highly recommend. Also, their staff are really lovely. It probably had the most staff I had ever seen in a yarn store. And I mean, they need it. It's huge. It's genuinely the biggest yarn store I think I've ever been to by far. It was insane. And it's all yarn. Like, I've been to stores that have yarn that are bigger. Usually they also have fabric, but they also have a whole other fabric store that I didn't go to that's kind of right by it. It blew my mind. Like, I had looked online and I saw pictures of the front of the store, but I don't think I realized the warehouse that was in the back. I thought the warehouse was for their staff, like where they kept their extra, but no. It's insane. And they also had a sale section where they had like $2 balls of yarn, and I am trying not to buy one-off yarn right now because it's too much of a responsibility for me. So I wanted to just get sweaters quantity, and I couldn't find a sweaters quantity in their sale yarn. But if you are looking for like Christmas gifts yarn for hats and you're in the area, you can get a hat quantity of yarn for like $3 easy. It was unbelievable. I understand why they are such a giant in the field. Yeah, so next place, I then was looking around my route. I then had to head towards New Haven. Went along my route. Apparently I used both. And along the way, right off the highway, was a place called the Yarn Barn. And I looked it up and it looked kind of warehousey too. And I would say the photos look very different than the shop itself. It is a bit much more standard. Oh, okay, let's go back for a second. In Northampton, I was driving because I wanted to find Dunkin' Donuts because I had never been before. And I tried a pumpkin spice latte and it was actually pretty good. And it was the first of the season, and I'm not a big pumpkin person, but I like to have the occasional pumpkin drink in the fall. Anyways, as I was driving there, I found that there was another yarn store down the street. I just couldn't find street parking to go there. So if you are in Northampton and you have traveled far to go to Webb's, if you go downtown in Northampton, there's another yarn store there. Also a Eileen Fisher boutique, which seemed extremely odd to be in a small town to me. Maybe that's where it originated. I don't know, I didn't stop. Anyways, back to the Yarn Barn. I went to the Yarn Barn. I went in, and that's where I discovered that there was actually a yarn crawl going on, where if you bought a $10 tote bag, you could be entered to win yarn, something or another. And I had went inadvertently to 2 of the shops on this thing. It was basically the whole route of the I-90. Is it the I-90? I-92? Whatever highway that goes between Massachusetts and Connecticut. And I was like, oh, well, I've already been to one shop and I didn't get the bag, and I don't really want the bag for $10, and what's the chance of me winning this thing? And so I was like, you know, I said to the lady, I think I'm accidentally doing this yarn crawl, but like, I'm good, I don't need it. And she was extremely confused, the owner of the yarn shop. She's like, why wouldn't you get the bag if you're doing the crawl? And I was like, no, it's okay. Like, I am good. I do not need any more cheap looking tote bags in my life. And she's like, yeah, but if you get the bag, you get a pattern. And I was like, what's the pattern? And she's like, oh, it's a shawl. I'm like, I will never make a shawl. I don't want your pattern. Like, I'll make a shawl, but like, we're good. It's okay. And so she's like, okay. She seemed extremely confused by me. So anyways, I looked around her shop. She had some lovely yarns as well. I kind of wish I had waited to buy the wool stock at her store. That said, I wouldn't have gotten the discount, but I felt bad going into her store. I didn't have a mask. I didn't realize that places here were still masking, and Europe has gotten me in the habit of not masking, and I probably should get back into the habit of masking again. But anyways, I didn't have a mask on me, and so I had to ask for a mask, and she very kindly gave me one. And I was like, okay, I have to buy something in this kind woman's store. And then I didn't find anything that really caught my eye. She did have a wholesale section, which it's actually quite reasonably priced, but the colors that she had on sale they look like sale colors, and there's nothing wrong with that. They just weren't my kind of colors. And yeah, a lot of Rowan yarns again. They had a big Rowan section. Juniper Moon seems really big here. A lot of places have Juniper Moon. She actually had Briggs and Little. For a markup, actually, it's cheaper to get in Canada, which I suppose isn't surprising. It's the Canadian brand. She did have the most beautiful stitch markers, and I almost got them. She had these stitch markers that were cute little ducks. They were adorable, but you got, I think, 7 in a pack for $30. And I was like, I can't spend $30 on some stitch markers, and I'm almost definitely gonna lose. And so I walked out without getting anything. And I do feel a little guilty, but I don't know, nothing caught my eye. And so then I was really hungry, but I knew I wanted to go to one more place because one of you guys had suggested that I go to Knit New Haven Knit. It's a knitting store in downtown New Haven, and the people who run it apparently have a podcast, and I forgot to look at the podcast before I went. I will definitely be looking at the podcast after. The two women who ran the store were incredibly kind to me, and they helped me choose out some yarn and were incredibly attentive. As I was just arriving, downtown New Haven has like one-way street after one-way street, and road signs in the US are set up differently than they are here, and I find it incredibly confusing. Whereas if there's something that the driver needs to know, usually it'll be on the driver's side of the light in Canada. So like on my side of the street, it will say, you can't turn right on this red or something. Whereas here it's on the other side, and my eye isn't always trained to look at that. And I was trying to look at traffic because I was sitting at a red and I was looking at my GPS, and I could see there was an opening, and I made a right on a red, and you're not allowed to do that here. And I didn't know because I didn't see the sign because it was across the street, and that's not where I was looking. And it was my fault, but being pulled over by a cop in the States scared the shit out of me. And so I was visibly shaken when I walked into the store. They didn't mention it. I think that was a kindness from their perspective. I would have been happy to talk about it, but it just really shook me up. I'm obviously in a very privileged position where I don't have to fear my life for getting pulled over, and he let me off with a warning, which was very kind of him. The police officer who pulled me over was kind. He was direct but kind, and he, yeah. But anyways, it just kind of rocked me a little bit. I didn't intend to come, like I didn't want to come to the States. It kind of, I think a lot of what you see in the news as a Canadian is the scarier parts of the States. But I will say everyone that I've met here has been absolutely lovely. I'm in a very safe area. But yeah, it just rocked me a little bit. And so as I went into this yarn store, I was a little rocked. And they were incredibly kind to me. So if they ever ended up seeing this, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your kindness, it really just touched me. Yeah, so anyways, I went in there, and their yarn store was definitely smaller but beautiful. They have a really curated selection of yarns. They have Brooklyn tweed, and they had I've never understood the appeal of Brooklyn tweed, I'll say first. I felt it before, and I was like, I don't understand why people like this. And they had a knitted sample that had been worn in a little bit in Brooklyn tweed, and holy heck, like I understand why people like it now. I get it. So I was going to get some of that, but the color that I had wanted, they were not sold out, but they didn't have the sweaters quantity that I wanted. So I ended up going with a different yarn. Let me pull it out. I've never heard of this brand, but the woman that I was talking to, I didn't grab her name, I should have, said it was really nice, and it's called Daylight's American Cuomo, and it is a DK weight. It's 250 yards per 100 gram skein, and this is grown in Montana, spun in New Hampshire by Harrisville Designs Yarn. So a nice American yarn again, which I like getting yarns in the place that I'm at, so that's wonderful. And anything else? This is in the color Caffeine. So this is a really cool concept for yarn brands, or for a yarn brand, I think. So they have their Daylights and their Nightshade, I think, Nightlight. I'll have to look it up, but they basically have versions of yarn that are on a white base and versions of yarn that are on a dark base. And then they add like tonals into it. So this tonal has some orange and brown in there. Come on. And I think it'll be hard to see without seeing other ones of this kind, but there were some with like a green specks and tonals in it, blue specks and tonals in it, and it just created this very subtle interest in each of the skeins of wool. So I got mine in Caffeine, which again are like more on the browny orangey side, and it's incredibly subtle, and I couldn't even tell until I removed the skeins from the cubby that they're in that this is what this brand was doing with their yarn. It was definitely on the pricier side. It is definitely a rougher wool. It does actually feel a lot like Brooklyn tweed, but I would say just a little bit softer and a little bit more dense. This was $21 a skein, and I got 5 of them. Usually 6 is a sweater's quantity for me, but 6 seemed a little steep to buy. So I'm hoping that I can find a sweater pattern out there that'll allow me to get a nice sweater for 5. I'm thinking just a very simple raglan with this and let these speckles really show themselves. I'm trying a new focus mode on the video, and I feel like it's almost focusing too much, but I like the effect. I don't know, what do you think? Anyways, I really like the feel of this yarn. I'm excited to see how it knits up. I think I'm actually gonna go look for like reviews and what other people have made in it. Hopefully that'll give me some inspiration. And then at the till, I ended up getting one of these, which I have wanted for a little while. They're these little cable needle things, and I just think that these will be really nice to cable with, and they were only $4. And I have seen them elsewhere. They're like, I think when I was in Stephen Penelope and saw them, they were like, I might be making this up, but I think they were like 12 euros, and it was like, heck no. But I can just use it as a little cable needle, and it's flexible, which is perfect. So I was excited to grab this little goodie too. And then I was chatting with her, and she gave me recommendations of like restaurants and stuff to go to. So super kind. Thank you if you ever see this. But yeah, it was such a lovely refresher after a very frustrating time. And I'm not saying I deserved to get pulled over. I made a mistake, and he was very kind to me. It is just my perceptions of the world that made it a little bit of a difficult time for me, and no one likes getting pulled over. I have never gotten a ticket. I've gotten pulled over twice. One was a mistake on the officer's part, and one is a mistake on my part. So I have been very lucky in my life in that regard. I'm also a very safe driver. So let's put that aside. But anyways, so that's what I've gotten at all 3 of the yarn stores that I've been to. I would say that of the 3 of them, really Webb's is the only one I'd say is worth traveling a distance to. It had just insane deals. I definitely could have spent a lot more money, and I think if it had been in Canadian currency, I might have bought a 4th sweater's quantity, but also knowing what I had at home, I think this is more than enough. I mean, it's more than enough anyway. And but I would say if you're in New Haven or even in the area for whatever reason, I would say Knit New Haven is definitely also worth going to. In the Yarn Barn, if you're in the area, I would say is worth the visit. I mean, it's definitely not the best yarn store whatsoever, but I would say between Webs and Knit New Haven, everything that was in that other one is also there. I will say for Knit New Haven as well, they had some kits, some Andrea Bowery kits. They had Dyed in the Wool spin cycle there as well. And I find that a lot of people who carry spin cycle have Andrea Bowery kits because I think that her knits are a little bit difficult to buy for, or at least I find them difficult to buy for and difficult to sub for, which is why I haven't made a ton of her patterns. That said, I'm making one of her patterns now. I think she makes amazing patterns, but I think a lot of her color work requires very specific yarn. So I think it's nice to get a kit if there's something specific, like one of her fade sets that you would like to get. So that's worth checking out as well. I don't have much else to say about the yarn stores that I went to. I've had a fantastic time driving in and around Massachusetts and Connecticut with the cops aside, the pulling over aside. I am here for a conference for the next 3 days, and then I'm actually heading up to Montreal to meet up with a friend. And if all goes right, I should get to 1 or 2 more yarn stores while I'm up in that area. One specifically, Espace Tricot, I'm hoping to get to. Please excuse my French accent. It is horrendous. I need to listen to more people speak French, but also on top of that, I hear Quebecois French and Paris or like France French, and the accents like smash in my brain. So while I'm reading French, I can read French. It just mashes into a horrific accent even in my head, and so I need to listen to more French because I can read it just fine. It just always comes out horrendous, and I never speak it. So anyways, I'm hoping to go there while I'm in Montreal, but it kind of all depends on traffic and the friend I'm with and a whole lot of other things. So if I go there, I don't think I'll do a proper knitting through Montreal because that's the only store I'm hoping to hit, but I will include it in my next podcast. So let me know if there's any cities that you would like me to see me go to some yarn stores for. I think this will be the last knitting through for the year. And early next year, I'm hoping to do a knitting through Toronto because that's a little bit more accessible to me. And there are some lovely Toronto yarn stores that I would love to introduce you to. But in the meantime, if you like this video, go ahead and give me a like. I am almost at 1,000 subscribers. So if you're not already, I would just love if you subscribed. And thank you so much for watching. It really means the world to me. I'll see you next time. Bye.